Felipe's silent tears. The truth of Leonor's love story. The palace looked calm. The country believed everything was under control. But behind those stone walls, something happened no one expected. A father broke down in silence. And the truth behind Leonor's love story forced King Felipe to face the one thing he had avoided for years. What he felt, what he feared, what he finally admitted, begins here. The truth of Leonor's love story did not reveal itself in a single moment. It unfolded slowly, like a page turning in a book Felipe had never wanted to open. From the outside, the world saw a confident princess, a future queen stepping gracefully toward her destiny. But inside the walls of Zarzuela, a different picture lived, one built not only on royal duty, but on the fragile ties holding a family together. It began months earlier, long before Spain whispered, long before the cameras chased the slightest movement, long before the palace aides sensed a shift in the air. Leonor had always been careful with her heart. She had been raised to be cautious, to understand that every choice carried a consequence, every friendship a headline, every emotion a potential threat. But even the most disciplined royal heart could not escape the pull of something real. Felipe first noticed it in her eyes. Not excitement, not rebellion, something deeper, something he recognized from his own youth, a quiet certainty, the kind that no protocol could erase. It scared him more than he wanted to admit. Because love, in the life of a monarch, is never just love. It becomes history. It becomes strategy. It becomes a battlefield. Felipe knew this better than anyone. His own marriage had been questioned, examined, doubted. When he looked at Leonor, he saw himself at her age, torn between what he wanted and what the crown demanded. But unlike him, Leonor did not hide it. She allowed her feelings to soften her voice, to warm her expressions, to change the rhythm of her days. And that was the first sign the palace noticed. One night, long after most of the household had gone to bed, Felipe wandered into the quiet hallways of Zarzuela. He needed time alone, but his thoughts refused to settle. He paused outside Leonor's door. He didn't knock. He didn't speak. He simply listened. Light footsteps. Soft laughter. A quiet sigh of someone lost in a world far away. A father always knows when his daughter is in love. But Felipe also knew something else. Love, for a future queen, always comes with a cost. As the days passed, the palace aides whispered. The royal advisors exchanged knowing glances. Someone had seen a message. Someone else had overheard a phone call. Someone noticed Leonor smiling at her phone in the middle of a protocol briefing. It spread quietly, like a secret carried by the wind. And though the palace tried to contain it, nothing stays hidden forever. The truth was simple. Leonor had found someone who made her feel human in a world that demanded perfection. Felipe struggled with it, not because he wanted to control her, but because he feared the world's reaction. He feared headlines twisting innocence into scandal. He feared comparisons to past monarchs. He feared the pressure that would fall on her shoulders. What he didn't expect was the effect it would have on him personally. Felipe had always been composed, disciplined, and emotionally reserved. But watching his daughter step into a love he couldn't control awakened an ache he thought he had buried, an ache rooted in the knowledge that monarchy and love rarely coexist peacefully. The moment everything changed was the evening Leonor finally said the words he had hoped, and feared, to hear. She walked into his study, the room dimly lit, the scent of old books lingering in the air. Felipe looked up from the papers he wasn't really reading. Leonor stood in the doorway, eyes steady, shoulders straight, her heart visible even through her calm expression. "Papa," she said softly, "there is something you must know." Felipe held her gaze. He knew. He had known for months. But hearing the truth from her lips felt like stepping into cold water. "I love him," she whispered. "And it's real." The room fell silent. Long, heavy, unbroken silence. In that moment, Felipe felt the weight of two worlds colliding. The world of a king, and the world of a father. He had spent his entire life balancing them, but this time the balance was slipping. Leonor continued speaking. Her voice remained gentle, but there was a firmness beneath it that he had never heard from her before. She explained how they met, what he meant to her, how she felt when they spoke, how he supported her, not as a princess, but as a woman finding her place in the world. Every word cut Felipe open and healed him at the same time. He saw her not as the heir to the throne, not as the symbol of Spain's future, but as the little girl he once carried on his shoulders, the child he had taught to walk on palace floors, the young woman who had inherited his stubborn heart. And that was when it happened. He felt tears rising, slow, unwanted, unstoppable. He turned his face away, but it was too late. Leonor saw it. The quiet crack in the facade he had built over decades. The father beneath the crown. Felipe wiped his eyes quickly, but the tears kept coming. They were not tears of anger. Not disappointment. Not fear. They were tears of a man realizing that his daughter's life was changing forever, and that he could no longer protect her from the world waiting outside. Leonor moved closer and placed her hand on his. Felipe finally looked at her fully, without the weight of protocol, without the distance of royalty. Just father and daughter. Just love. What scares you, Papa? She asked. Everything. That was the truth. The noise. The criticism. The political implications. The relentless public scrutiny. The knowledge that people would question her choice before they even understood it. The fear that the crown would suffocate her happiness. The fear that he, as king, would be forced to choose between duty and his daughter's heart. But he didn't say any of that. He simply whispered, "I want the world to be kind to you." Leonor's grip tightened. "I don't need the world to be kind to me. I need you to be with me." Those words shattered something inside him and rebuilt something new. Over the following weeks, Felipe watched her from a distance, how she moved, how she carried her responsibilities, how she spoke to advisors, how she held onto her truth. He realized something important. Leonor had grown stronger than he ever expected. She wasn't asking for permission. She was asking for trust. And trust was the one thing he had always owed her. Meanwhile, the palace began to tremble beneath the pressure. Rumors leaked. Journalists asked questions no one wanted to answer. Europe speculated. Royal commentators analyzed every gesture, every silence, every unknown detail. The tension grew so thick that even the walls felt heavy. Felipe tried to remain centered. But every headline, every political concern, every advisor's warning tore at him. He feared losing control. He feared losing Spain's respect. He feared losing his daughter to a future he could not predict. One night, alone in the royal chapel, Felipe allowed the truth to rise inside him. It came slowly, painfully, like a confession whispered into the air. His tears fell onto the wooden pew. Silent, private, unseen by anyone but God. Those tears told the story he could never speak publicly. The story of a father who realized that his daughter's love story was not a threat. It was a crossroads, a moment defining not only her path, but his own legacy. The fear he carried would not dictate the future. His tears did not come from weakness. They came from understanding that Leonor was no longer his child. She was a woman forging her destiny, a future queen building her own version of courage. And with this truth came a new question. Could the crown survive love? Felipe knew the answer depended on him. The next morning, he called Leonor into the private garden. The same garden where he had once taught her to play, the same garden where she had taken her first steps, the same garden where he had promised himself he would always protect her. Leonor arrived, calm and steady. Felipe looked at her with new eyes, not with fear, but with respect. "I am ready to support you," he said. "But you must promise me one thing." Leonor nodded. "Anything. Carry your heart with wisdom. And never forget that love is only strong when it stands with truth." She smiled softly, and in that moment, Felipe saw himself reflected in her. The strength, the discipline, the gentleness, the fire. The truth of Leonor's love story was no longer a threat. It was a new beginning. For her, for him, for the crown. And as Spain prepared for what would come next, Felipe stood silently behind the woman who would inherit his throne. The father who had cried in the shadows now walked beside her in the light. The world would soon witness the full story. But the truth, the real truth, began with a king's silent tears and the love he finally understood.